Hello, my name's Will Edmonds. Welcome to Panther Sports Under the Claws. Today we are joined by two-time Super Bowl champion and the current head football coach here at Georgia State University, Bill Curry. Coach Curry, welcome to Panther Sports.
Thank you, Will. It's a real thrill to be here, and I'm impressed with your preparation.
Thank you. So tell me, what's it like being back in Atlanta, the city you were born and raised in, working again?
It's almost indescribable. It really is. And I say almost because I think I can do it. Think of the place that you love most, where you grew up. That's Atlanta, downtown Atlanta for me. Not just the broad interpretation of metropolitan, but right down here. My dad worked about 4 blocks that direction. I worked at a Tom McCann shoe store at 5 Points, which is only a couple of blocks from here. And there were so many pleasant memories that it's just fun to come down here and reminisce before I go to work and after. So it's a great joy to be back here, and it's a joy to work at Georgia State, which is an institution that's dear to our heart.
What many of our viewers won't know is that football was not your first love. You actually grew up loving baseball. And it wasn't until the 1958 NFL championship game between the Baltimore Colts and the New York Giants was the first time you sat down with your dad and you watched a football game in its entirety. What was it about that game that captured your heart?
First of all, it was being played in Yankee Stadium. And my intention as a high school junior, which is what I was at the time, was to pitch for the New York Yankees. And Yankee Stadium was like Mount Olympus to me. So I was interested in seeing what it was going to be like. Well, then the game had such drama, and it went back and forth, and there was such charisma on both sides of the ball, with Gifford on the one side and Unitas and Raymond Berry and all those, Gino Marchetti, who broke his leg during the game. All these things happened that just turned it into drama that you can't escape. And even though I was a football player, my heart wasn't in it until that day, and I think there was a sea change that day.
Well, if I can quote you, in your book you wrote, "I was one of the early, eager, utterly smitten converts to America's game, rising from the back row as surely as a repentant sinner in a Billy Graham crusade. With every head bowed and every eye closed, I quietly raised my hand, went forward, and fell to my knees in adoration of the new state religion of the United States of America, pro football." Do you still consider football closer to a religion than a sport?
Sadly, there are people who think that way. They should not. I should not. But certainly there have been times when we treat it as if it were a religion. And what is religion? For most people, religion means there's something that has an answer for everything. And there are actually people in this part of the country who treat football as if it were going to solve all their problems. If we can only win the national championship, everything will be wonderful. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe their team wins the national championship, everything's not wonderful. 2 years later, they fire the coach because he loses 2 games, or he loses a rivalry game. And it's another thing about religion is that it's an illogical tribal system. Well, so is football in this part of the world. So I really did. I've been to revival meetings, and I was a convert, and I could have been metaphorically raising my hand and going forward.
Now, you've played under some of the greatest coaches of all time, Bobby Dodd, Vince Lombardi, Don Shula, to name but a few. I'm not going to ask you to compare those guys today, but can you see aspects in all of those coaches in the way that you coach yourself?
I don't think you can avoid it. I think you find yourself drawing on the best attributes of each one. And if I had to wrap it up quickly in a tidy package for Bobby Dodd, I would say it was his genius in understanding his student athletes. What was our advantage at Georgia? The perception of the Georgia Tech football player was that we were smarter than other people. Now, we were stupid enough to believe that, which meant we had an advantage. We thought we were smart. So when something happened in the game, whether or not we really were smarter, we usually took advantage and managed to find a way to win. So that's confidence. With Lombardi, his genius is much, much misunderstood. And I didn't get it. When I tried to play for him, I hated his guts because he wasn't Bobby Dodd. I never forgave him for not being Bobby Dodd until I walked in his hospital room and he was on his deathbed, and I saw that he was authentic. That was his true greatness. His other true greatness was the part that almost never nobody saw, which was He always knew when to back off. He never had us tired at game time. You would have thought he'd have been the most tyrannical worker, but he was not. He kept us on the field shorter than most of the other coaches. Not much known. Don Shula's great genius was that he could spot something in a human being. He decided whether or not he could believe in you. If he decided he believed in you, he would never give up on you. So when you got in a tough game, you would never give up on him. That was his genius. And he took guys like me off the junk heap, gave us starting positions, pushed us, made us teammates, and won championships. Won more games than any coach in the history of the NFL. And I think it was because of that loyalty factor.
And you can see these aspects in the way that you sort of think when you're sort of trying to put together practices and the way you want your own team to run.
I find myself actually referencing those guys. It's as if you were taking an English final and T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland, and you memorize the last 20 stanzas. That stuff comes back to you when you need it, and hopefully that works for coaches too.
Now, it's interesting what you said about Lombardi, because before Super Bowl III, you were quoted by the New York Times as saying that you didn't have a pleasant memory of any of your association with the Green Bay Packers, and the problem was simple: Vince Lombardi. You've since said you regret saying these things, and you said you went to Vince Lombardi's deathbed. When you see players like Terrell Owens talking bad about their teammates and coaches, and this happens, seems more frequently now, what goes through your mind?
Don't do that. You're a moron. That's what goes through my mind. Just like Bill Curry was a moron for doing that. That's not. If you got something to say to another person, the right way to do it is to go to them, shut the door, and say it to them face to face. Not in a headline in the New York Times or the Dallas whatever or the AJC. That is not the way to be a real human being. And I was immature and I was wrong. And thank goodness in the case of Coach Lombardi, I was able to get to him and apologize. There were other situations where I was not quite so fortunate, and I wish I had done better. That's not a good thing to do. Trashing people to somebody else is the worst form of, it's the anti-team response mechanism, and it's the opposite of what the good stuff of football really teaches.
Now, going back a bit, before you had graduated high school, you'd already worked a multitude of jobs, including, as you said earlier, working in a shoe store and working a construction job. When you think about current college players today that have maybe never worked a job before, they're a bit pampered, they've had it easy, do you think these players could benefit from the sort of discipline and work ethic that you can only really learn in the workforce at a young age?
Well, first of all, a lot of the guys did have to work early. They weren't always star athletes. They're just a very few. The very highest level of talent is treated in a special manner from the time they're 12 years old. Most of the guys in my sport are not those great athletes. Those guys play basketball. I'm serious now. I mean, everybody in the world knew that Michael Jordan, by the time he was a senior in high school, was going to be something super special. That you can't say that about a lot of us, especially the linemen. So even in today's world, a lot of the guys do learn the values of the work ethic. For the ones who don't, they get in a college program, and when you're in a tough college program, like Georgia State football will be, you're going to get up at 6 in the morning, pump iron, eat breakfast, go to class, get out, go to tutoring, go to football meetings, go to football practice, run, work yourself into oblivion until about 5:30, 6 o'clock, come off the field, go back in the weight room, finish your workout, eat dinner, go to tutoring, go to the library, work till midnight, get up at 5 a.m. and do it again every single day, including the off season. So those guys know how to work.